I'm super excited to have you on the Leaders Who Care series. Paul, welcome.
Great to be here. Thanks, Mark.
And this is a unique opportunity because I'm in Miami, not my usual backstop interviewing. So you're the first one to be interviewed from Miami for whatever that's worth.
It's my pleasure. This is one of the rare Miami to Nairobi interviews being done right now.
Sister city thing, who knows? Maybe something like that.
Yeah.
So no, we're really happy you're being here. We're excited about our relationship and where we're going from here. I want to chat a little bit about that too. But why don't we start in the normal place? If you could briefly introduce yourself. As I always say, the key word here is briefly, because if you tell everything, I got nothing else to do the rest of this.
There's nothing. Yeah, we'll just wrap. I will monologue my life story for 20 minutes. No, sure. So I'm Paul. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Shortlist. We're a talent advisory firm and tech company working primarily across Africa and a bit in Asia, India as well. We started about 6 years ago, and we do a blend of executive search for leadership hiring across the startup space as well as the social impact space in Africa, working with a whole bunch of NGOs and foundations and impact investors. And then we also have a tech platform that enables us to run youth employment programs. And we're really focused on getting young Africans, young professionals into these first jobs and hopefully onto meaningful and purpose-first career ladders, particularly in clean energy and tech and digital skills. Me personally, I've spent the last 16, 17 years focused primarily on this meeting point between business and social impact, trying to figure out ways business can be a force for good, not evil. And so much of my career before this was financial inclusion, microfinance, including an operating role in a microfinance institution in India, and also setting up an impact investing fund focused on inclusive fintech startups called Axiom Venture Lab. And that's been great. Then before that, if we go back that far, lawyer, advertising executive, few other things. So we'll see where you want to take it.
So, and that's the end of our interview. We had a great time.
Done. Yes.
So tell us a little bit about Paul. It's always interesting when I talk to men and women. When I talk to men, they start with what they do in their jobs and everything. When I talk to women, it's about family, and then it leads to their jobs and what they're interested in. So we're going to do a little rewind. And I'm going to say, who's Paul?
He's a guy from a small town in Western New York State. So I was born in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, grew up in a 20,000 person town in Western New York, where it was always very cold, and didn't travel a lot, didn't see a lot of the world. So actually going to college and leaving home and then post college. Really got into a lot more international travel. Had always been fascinated by, I think that the two jobs I dreamt about as a kid were first and foremost being the next Michael Jordan. Somewhere around age 13, I think I realized that wasn't going to happen for me. I kind of realized if I wasn't dunking yet, things probably weren't looking good. And the other one was Indiana Jones. And I think I don't think I've achieved either, but I'm probably a little closer to Indiana Jones in terms of trying to build a career that allowed me to travel around the world, have some adventures, experience new places, and try out new things, which has been great.
And what about family?
Family's still back in New York, and I'm recently married to my wonderful wife, Rachel, who's a product director at Google, and living here with me in Nairobi.
So you talked about as a kid, and I would I'd like to know if you describe your life as a kid to a teenager. I was going to ask, were you one of those guys playing with Lego? Did you have lemonade stands to make money? Were you organizing friends to do stuff in the community? What were you like?
I'm always jealous of the people whose stories are, I was a born entrepreneur. And, I woke up and I was delivering newspapers. And then I said, I'm going to buy my local newspaper and I'm going to distribute. No, wasn't me. I was a sport obsessed guy, and it almost didn't matter the sport. But if I was outside playing American football or basketball or tennis or golf, and I'd have a different obsession each season. And I was probably also the guy that was trying to skate by probably until late middle school, early high school, when I became a little bit more serious about and competitive about school. Until that point, it was like, how do I stay as far away from the classroom as possible and just make sure there's a ball in my hand, a hoop nearby, a bunch of people that I can tackle or be tackled by. Yeah, much more obsessed with the athletics when I was younger.
Well, I can definitely relate to that, even to the point where I was all excited that the Montreal Canadiens were going to be at this McDonald's doing stuff, and I was going to be able to meet them. And I was involved
Hmm.
in community stuff, and I get there, and we're put into the back room making the French fries, where the Canadian hockey players are out front talking to the people. And so,
Yep, yep, yep.
however, I realized that I did need to go to college because I didn't know when the beep went for the French fries. I didn't know how to coordinate and be aligned that those were ready and then the burger was ready at the same time and whatnot. It was like, holy cow, put me up
Hmm.
front with those guys. I know what I do better there. But
Yep,
didn't you find, though, on that track, I compare sports to business all the time. Whether you knew
yep,
it or not, you were learning a ton by the involvement in sports, were you
a
not?
ton. Absolutely. And I talk about this, I write about this, but I think so much about what I learned about leadership and my conception of what a good leader is was defined by coaches, captains, and my own leadership experience as a captain of a few sporting teams, and just trying to be an effective contributor to sporting teams. I think there's something so unique and visceral about the kinds of leadership and team coordination that needs to happen. Basketball is a great example. I'm sure everyone's got others, hockey, global football, et cetera. But for me, in basketball, if you don't know what your teammates are doing, if you can't anticipate what they're thinking, if you can't see a backdoor pass at the same moment, just know the person's going to do it and be in sync in that way, you're underperforming your potential. And you see that when teams like, I don't remember what year it was, maybe it was 92 or 96 or whatever, when Argentina beat the US Dream Team. And you can see that really clearly. And I take those lessons to heart when we're building our teams, when we're helping clients build teams. I sometimes feel like people who haven't played sports almost missed out on an opportunity to see how important culture is, how important teamwork is. So yeah, we could spend the rest of our time definitely just chatting about lessons learned
Yeah,
on the playing field or on the court.
no doubt. I remember when the Miami Heat, there were seconds left to play, and they were bringing the trophies out and everything. And I don't know, it was maybe 8 seconds, 12 seconds, whatever. And they were like 5 points behind and they won the game. And the players
Yep,
said they trusted each other and they trusted their coach as to what
yep,
had to be done. And you reminded me of that when you said the backhand pass or whatever, you trust
yep.
they're going to be there.
Yeah, and there's a famous story about that game because I think you're talking about the Spurs game where Ray Allen hits the three-pointer, and it's a famous story about how Greg Popovich brought his team back together after that devastating loss. And so yeah, and so there's on both sides there's amazing stories.
It is, and I hear that a lot, especially from men, because men were more involved. It's changing now, more involved in sports, and I hear that a lot with respect to confidence too. Men, when I interview, they seem to go back to even one moment they've had where the coach put them in the last few seconds of the game, and they realized the coach really believed in them. It didn't even matter what happened after that. What mattered the most was the coach actually put me in a key part of the game, and that's their foundation of their confidence in everything they've done from then on.
I don't know if I ever had that experience, but what immediately came up were not times of coach putting me in and believing in us, but moments of coaches screaming at us because we were getting smug and felt like we had it figured out and we couldn't be better. And the coach just kind of putting us in our place, reminding us you could always be better, you can always work harder. And I think those are lessons I also learned from my parents as well. So yeah, I think everyone's got their lessons.
Well, I've talked to some pro coaches, and they'll move on, who knew which players they could yell at and which players they had to hug.
Yeah. Yep.
And why wouldn't it work the same way in a business, right?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
so you mentioned you went to Yale, law firm, financial inclusion, impact investment. I didn't grow up saying, "Man, I want to be a headhunter when I grow up," either. Um, it never just happens, but how did you find that transition? And did you find it was always there, or you left the door open to opportunity and then you walked through it, a combination? What did that look like for you?
I think, and I don't think I'm at an end point either. I think that I've been on this journey of exploring different ways innovation and business can deliver positive change in the world. Whether that's something like trying to address something like climate change, or provide something needed to a low income household or small business, or create a job. That's always been the motivation. And I think, I don't think I figured this out straight out of college. I do think it was after law school that I kind of picked up this thread. But ever since then, I just feel like I've been almost like a, cat pulling in a ball of yarn, like just kind of keep pulling the thread. And whereas it started initially like, where do I work? Okay, microfinance. And then it came to, oh, I see startups innovating in fintech. How do I help them? Well, they're not getting money. Cool. Let me try to set up this investment fund. To then, oh, these companies are getting money, but they can't get people. What's going on? Like, what's the breakdown here? We need to like figure out the people side. And so I think so far in this journey, we'll see where it might go in the future. But I do have such a deeper appreciation for the human side, the human capital side of the impact space, and I see now more clearly the hundreds of people that focus their careers on mobilizing money for impact, and that is critically important, and you can't get anywhere without money. But I can only think of maybe a dozen people, you're one of them, that like really have committed a substantial part of their careers to like, how do we figure out the people side of all this, the softer side? And obviously it's more than a dozen, but I think it's an under-focused area. And so I do think we found it, my co-founders, Simon and Matt, we found it kind of accidentally. I think we've always been in love with the problem of how do we get people more efficiently placed into the roles they should be in, both for the company's sake and for their own sake, and always a bit solution agnostic, which I think has been one of our strengths. And we thought that this would be a tech company, and for the first few years, it was a tech company. And I think I'm glad we were kind of attuned to the tugs of the universe when it kind of said, actually, you probably should be focusing more on this other stuff that's taken us to where we are today. And where it goes from here, we'll see.
Yeah, no, it's a great story. And similarly, when I trademarked the term "leaders who care," I kept hearing from people, even before being in search at Deloitte, at this leadership development organization that I was in and whatnot. People kept saying, "Well, why aren't we getting the best people? Why aren't we getting the best out of our people?" And someone would say, "Well, maybe we need to care about them more." And someone with too much time on their hands would say, "Let's give them an extra sick day. That'll do it." Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Good advice. And so we found it fast forward, as you well know, is leaders started to realize that if they don't really care about their talent and don't offer them, financial well-being, if you will, as well as mental well-being and making a difference, they won't go there, and you won't get the talent. So
yeah, I think whenever your answer to disengagement or dissatisfaction is less work or more disengagement, I think you have a problem. I mean, one of our values at Shortlist is be a whole person, which part of that is literally be multidimensional, be interesting, take care of your health, find balance. But there's also, we're always quick to point out, it doesn't just mean work 9 to 5 and get home every night for dinner. There's this part of unity and integration where we really want people to feel like they're growing into their jobs as very consistent and an integral part of their identity, what they care about, what they want to be doing. And so yeah, it's interesting you say that. I see that happening a bit. Like, let's throw them a perk. Let's throw them a distraction from work. Let's give them a day off. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes that could be a good tool, but you may be missing the deeper point of a disengagement with purpose, with culture. People aren't connecting to their work and their calling the way they should.
Yeah, 100%. We talk to our clients a lot now about well-being. And that's a lot to now. And but there's the three types: there's financial, there's physical, and there's mental well-being. And you raise a point. There's been a lot of studies done. There's blue zones out there. Who's living the longest and healthiest? Yeah. And at the end of the day, it always comes down to the thing that fills people's hearts and souls more than anything is belonging. And
yeah.
And if you don't feel that purpose you're talking about, or you don't feel like 5 o'clock, oh, I got to leave type of thing, a lot of things happen. Your performance, you're not happy, but it even goes beyond that. And it's about family and community. When the parents or the partners go home, there's two things that happen. They'll always they'll come back, man, I'm tired. My boss sucks. Everything I did today was terrible. Da, 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 da. And I just don't like it. And the kids see that. Or, man, you got to hear what happened at work today. We did this, and she
Yeah.
just probably get a bonus. And they asked me to participate in this community project they're doing, which is
Mhm.
super cool. And the kids hear that. And
Yeah.
so you're in big influence, which then goes into community. It's not that complicated, actually.
Yeah.
And so I think that's
Yep.
kind of what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's finding, you raise a good point. It's like all these blue zone studies, they focus a lot on what are you eating? High protein, high carbs, low carbs, when really the issues around feeling loneliness as a negative, and then a positive, a sense of belonging, community, friendships, family. That's really what determines health, longevity, a lot more than we seem to give it credit for.
Yeah, I was talking to a real estate client. It's in multi-use apartments, condos, whatever type of, and really quick, he talked about by accident how they realized the community that was being created in the apartment complex, and how it kept the vacancies way down, and people were volunteering to do stuff in the apartment building and everything. And now they're flourishing on creating communities in their multi-unit real estate. It's
Yeah.
it's amazing. And when it got to be remote work, imagine how that was impacted by having people around you that cared about you, that weren't even in your business, just your
Yep.
neighbors.
Absolutely.
So super cool. And you know this, when we launched Fifth Element about 4 years ago at the UN, actually on International Women's Day, it was on the basis that leaders in their businesses can do even better when they're doing good. Again, you can have economic and social impact at the same time, type of thing. Can you share with us how you also realize the value of that to both Shortlist and the clients that you work with?
Yeah, I think the idea of doing well while doing good has been core to how Simon and I have approached our entire careers. Um, Look, I do think there are things that need to be done in the world, different public goods, different charitable things that genuinely there's no business model for, there's no business case. We have to figure out the right way to have money to support those kinds of things. But I think there's a lot more things in the world that, with enough creativity and entrepreneurship, we can really align those incentives where the more you address a problem, the more good things happen, and you can get rewarded for that. And I do think we've been working really hard to try to make sure Shortlist is in that nexus where we're being led by how do we solve these very real problems. We think about this. Our original and ongoing short cryptic mission statement has always been unlock professional potential. And yes, that could mean a lot of things, but for us, it has always been very clear, whether it's the company's potential or the person's potential, what are the steps that will help unlock that? How do we keep that as a North Star? Like I said, it's been a journey from initially thinking this might be solved with tech to now something that in some parts of our business is pure professional services, and in other parts is still tech enabled. But I think even now, as we think about where to go in the future, we continue to just be driven by that goal. And there's different creative business models and things we're exploring. We're running a program right now focused on trying to get a lot more young Kenyans working in the global digital economy, specifically in the data labeling industry. Those people are kind of helping a machine figure out a self-driving car. Is that a stop sign? Is that a person? Is that a curb? What are these things? It's pretty basic work, but it is a step one to a career where you're working for a global company in a stable, reliable job, and it can lead to different places. One of the biggest issues is they don't have computers, and as the world shifted remote, if you don't have a computer, you can't participate in any of these jobs. And so we're launching with support from the Dutch government, launching a program to start financing with zero interest loans laptops so people can participate. It's kind of a ancillary jump in some ways from what we do day to day. And I don't know if this will become a whole big business or it will become stay more focused. We'll see. But I think the ability for us to continue seeking out these overlaps between like doing well in terms of like there's a business model, there's positive unit economics, we can grow it, but also of course doing good. Like there's something good that's coming out of this work other than just making money.
And which is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing that you can
Yeah.
do both at the same time. And candidates want to go to places where they can still make money and not have to
Yeah.
sacrifice that for making a difference, or vice versa. That's what they want to do. And I love that you gave that example, because what we've always found is if we align with people that have that objective, that you can, by doing good, what ends up happening is you're surrounded by other people that want to do good, but they also want to make money, and they realize it's important and move forward. So you end up in relationships like we now have, where other things come up. Like we're going to talk about this Philippines client that wants to do similar stuff
Yeah.
with their youth and do that, which we couldn't have offered, but you can offer to them. And then searches come up because you're in a relationship, and so searches come up. It's good for us, but it's also good for the client because they trust that we're real, we're authentic, and we can help them based on what we've done with other projects. Again, it's not rocket science. If you think about, to your point right at the beginning, people first, the rest of it comes. And so I'm super excited about not only the complementary resources, expertise we can offer each other, not only the geographical expansion we can do together, but the reputation, the relationships we're going to be able to have with clients of sustainable relationships, where we're bringing up future leaders, to be cute, future leaders who care, into their communities that are going to make a difference, which will be good for everybody.
Yeah, and we're excited to be working with you all as well. I think whenever you think about looking at partnerships, there's the head component and the heart component. And the head component is easy because it's kind of, there's these obvious synergies where we both are trying to have similar impact. We've got certain specialties sitting in Africa around youth employment. We've got a tech platform. We've got certain things. You guys have certain networks and access points and global perspectives and relationships that would be hard for us to certainly couldn't do on our own. But the hard thing, I think, is where the way in which you can tell that both of our organizations care so much about similar things, not only wanting to see similar impacts in the world, but the way it's done, grounded with some sense of sustainability and business fundamentals, not just pure giveaways. And not that there's, again, we need that for a lot of things in the world, but I think the connection there, and even the way it's been great to build the relationship. I mean, what we've talked probably, I don't know, half dozen times more. I know the team, we've met so many times. It's been great to develop that.
Well, sometimes it takes longer to fall in love for some reason, I guess, and then you I don't know. But
exactly.
I mentioned well-being before. I just want to touch on it before we leave. One of the things we're doing a lot is talking to clients about the importance of that to their talent. And one client, this is actually a number of years ago, that I had world headquarters in Miami. A lot of young families working for them. They were stressed about going home. How do they get home? They have to work, etc. Twitter now with Trump. I don't know what the family's going to do there. No, not with Trump, with Elon Musk. There's a that he says, you gotta tell me by 5 p.m. today if you're going to be willing to work hardcore everything. And
I saw that. That. Yeah.
Wow. But what this company did was they built a daycare center in their headquarters. Mm-hmm. It was the best ROI they had in years in all aspects. People saying, thank you for caring about us. I can have lunch with my kid. Don't have to worry about rushing home. Don't have to go through rush hour to get home. I mean, a million things. And so we've been talking to our clients about having, depending on how big the company is, chief well-being officers or manager of well-being. Just that alone tells people that are looking at them to join them or not that, well, these guys really do care and they can prove it. What do you think about that?
It's the first time I've heard that phrase, but I really like it, and I really like the concept. I think we're in a place where the notion of HR has to change, and even rebranding it as people ops, or generating chief people officers. I still think the connotation and the approach of most people is some mix of administrative and strategic. How do we make sure salaries are paid, benefits are there, there's handbooks, etc. And how do we make sure that we're hiring people the right timeline, we're checking the checklists off on onboarding, things like that. Whatever we call it, we are entering a phase where we are going to have to be really creative about what it means to have an engaged team, to have great cultures, and to have happy and healthy teammates and employees. I'm not sure where we're headed, but no question, I mean, we're on our own journey of how do we adapt to a remote work context? How do we make sure people are taken care of in this new world? I'm a leader that is perhaps old-fashioned in the sense that a lot of how I would lead a basketball team if I was a coach or a captain would be, kind of generally sensing the energy levels and the mood and kind of going and saying hi to someone really quickly and, maybe bumping fists and asking them a couple questions. And that's been removed as an input tool. And so how do we find out how people are doing, what they're doing? And it's more than work now. I think that's a trend. Certainly Gen Z's running with it. I think millennials probably started it, but and maybe it's been there even longer, but certainly seeing much less patience to just be like, okay, this is my job. It's not supposed to be fun. I'm just going to go and do it and punch the clock, to really needing to feel like day to day people are growing, they're challenged, they're cared for, expecting work to be part of how they as employees are generating impact in the world, expecting work to be contributing money or insights or resources on things like, their meditation practice, their photography classes, their creative writing, classes, their clubs. So, and I think that's great. And I want the companies to see it more. So yeah, I think it's whatever there's going to be all these we're going to have chief well-being, chief impact, chief engagement officers, chief culture officers, whatever that mix is. There is no question that we need leadership, creativity, and people focused on this issue of health, happiness, the soft stuff that isn't soft at all. Because if you get it right, magic can happen within teams and within companies. So yeah, I love that concept. I hope we see more of them.
Yeah, well, we're making a point of it. So we'll see.
Is the company going to do it?
There's a few companies that we're talking, more than a few companies that we're talking about well-being officers. There's some that already have chief medical officers, and so it's definitely happening. And we'll talk more about it. But it actually, even in its purest form, could be the deciding factor of a woman joining company A versus company B, knowing that you really care.
That's great.
Because candidates will ask about that stuff now. Don't just tell me you're in diversity. What are you actually doing with diversity?
Right.
What are you actually doing
with
the environment, etc.? So it's super important and super exciting. Last question I want to ask you here is, one client told me in 2021 about 2020, he said, Mark, that was the year that flew by slowly. And I thought, what a great line it was. And then 21 and 22 literally zoomed by, figuratively, and what we're on now and all that zoomed by. And so what are you most grateful for with all that happened, and what are you most hopeful for?
I think I'm that's a great question. I think I'm grateful for the ways that COVID has surprisingly been able to enable and strengthen certain relationships I really value. One is, of course, and my wife would be embarrassed to hear me say this, but the way in which COVID, by virtue of lockdowns and remote work, enabled us to actually make a long distance New York-Nairobi relationship work because we were able to be in the same place, but also all the different ways that I've lived overseas much of the last 15 years of my life, and that means away from loved ones. And there was some leveling of the playing field that happened when you're always like, everyone was pretty much a phone call away from everyone. And the ways in which my college roommate group found WhatsApp, and we went from probably a decade of not really talking much at all to all of a sudden daily chatter and pictures and kid shots and whatever. And I feel like I've been talking to my parents more. And so I actually, have been grateful. And who knows, I suppose everyone during COVID probably thinks about family, thinks about friends more. It feels like more critical and important. And so yeah, grateful for the strange counterintuitive ways that has been empowered.
I got it. And hopeful?
Hopeful. Boy, there's a lot of darkness right now. I think the space that we work in and watching and getting to work with every day, people that are optimistically pursuing scalable solutions and scalable ideas that may or may not work, but the energy with which people are trying new things and still care about making the world a better place. That gives me hope. There is also, though, of course, a lot to be scared of at the moment, and so we're speaking as COP is barreling towards a conclusion. I don't know that we're very optimistic that'll matter much, but certainly whatever our policymakers end up doing, whatever promises are made, kept, broken, whatever they are. I'm sure, like you, I'm excited to work with a bunch of leaders that are still kind of optimistically trying new things, working on things, and having real impacts for real people that I get to see on a regular basis. So
yeah, well said on both of those. I think we've learned how connection has to be real, and we've made it more important. To your first point, and hopeful. I agree 100%. You have to be hopeful, and you have to engage to make stuff happen. So, so I'm grateful and hopeful that you're one of the leaders who care, and which I'm excited about us doing more together, and Simon and your whole team, and so let's lead the way, And thank you for participating and joining on our series.
Yeah, thanks for all the work that you and the Fifth Element team do. It's been really inspiring.